Welcome back to Up Front. The race for Secretary of State this year pits a political newcomer against a veteran office holder who also happens to have one of the most famous names in state politics. In last month's primary, Republican Julian Bradley of La Crosse won the right to challenge Democratic incumbent Doug LaFollette. I recently talked to Bradley about his bid for statewide office. So let's begin with the obvious question, the one you hear. Why do we even need this office? A lot of people say it has very few functions, very little relevance in today's world. Why do we need it?
Well, I think the problem with the lack of functions and the lack of relevance comes to the person that's in the office now. You know, I'm running for Secretary of State. I had a lot of people asking me, especially when I was on a speaking tour, when are you going to run for office? And I said, as soon as I can find a place where I can make a positive impact. And when you look at the Secretary of State's office, which has been described as you just did on too many occasions, you realize it needs positive change, it needs positive impact. And I've got a three-point plan to do that. I want to reform the office by being active and transparent so people will know who the Secretary of State is and what it is I'm doing. And I want to work to restore not just duties to the office, but I want to restore faith in it as well. And I think that's probably the most important part. And I want to rebuild. I want to rebuild the bridges that have been burned by the current Secretary of State to the other branches of state government. In my travels, over 40,000 miles, I've had people come up to me, both in the Assembly, the Senate, and regular people that say, I didn't even know, I've never met the Secretary of State. And people outside of the legislature don't even realize that we elected. That's a failure in communication. So I want to rebuild those bridges. And that's what, this office is a constitutional office that still has a function. And I want to make sure that somebody competent is there to do that function.
So I hear you saying you want to rebuild, you want to restore, you want to revitalize. You're a Republican. Some people might say that sounds like bigger government. You want to add more to this office. Is it not bigger government?
It is not. This is just an office that's there now. I want to make sure we're making it more efficient. Good government is taking bad government and making it efficient. And that's what we want to do. This is an office that will be there for the next 4 years regardless. So I want to make sure that as the Secretary of State, I'm doing the most I can to bring value back to the position and value to the taxpayers paying my salary.
I want to have you address something I heard in an interview with Steve Walters from Wisconsin Eye earlier this summer. You're talking about possible functions of the Secretary of State. And one of the possible duties, you said, might be overseeing elections, having responsibilities that are currently performed by the Government Accountability Board move to your office. Why would it be better for the people of the state to have a partisan office oversee the administration of elections than it is to have, for example, retired judges doing that?
Well, I wouldn't eliminate the retired judges. I would move the entire GAB to under the umbrella of the Secretary of State.
And that would be a good thing, you say?
So they would still be there. And I do think that would be a good thing. Most states, the elections division is run by the Secretary of State. Your county clerks are partisan and they're elected. And they're entrusted at the county level to administer and take care of elections. So I think we should have a state elections official that's also elected. But that's not my goal for the immediate term.
That's down the road?
Right. A lot of talk has been made about eliminating this office. I'm running because we're going to have it for the next 4 years, regardless of whether the Assembly and the Senate come together to decide whether to eliminate. So I want to make sure that the person that's there is competent in performing the duties to the best of their ability and is bringing true value to the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin.
Some people became familiar with you a couple of years ago. You did something called a Shattering Stereotypes tour.
Yes.
Talking about the fact that you're a Republican, that you're an African-American who's a Republican.
Yes.
And I'm curious why you felt that needed to be done. Why hasn't the party done a better job of getting black voters to cast ballots for Republicans?
Well, what I did is I decided to step forward and start talking about this. As conservatives by nature, it isn't our nature to really stand up and say, hey, look at me, look who we're bringing into the umbrella. So I decided that somebody needed to. And who better than myself to talk about it? I grew up in a Democratic household. My mom was a staunch Democrat. In 2002, I joined the Republican Party. Much to her surprise.
And she still loves you.
And she did, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it really was a situation where I realized people weren't talking about it. And I was tired. I was county chairman for the La Crosse County Republican Party through the recalls. And so often I'd hear people, my friends, my colleagues in the party, called racists and all Republicans are this or that. And I decided that I wanted to set the record straight, and I could because I have the experience. I came up through the grassroots. My whole campaign is grassroots based. And I wanted to prove to people that the misperception out there is just not correct. And so that's what I did, and I started traveling the state and throughout the Midwest and talking about the great things of the Republican Party and how, you know, the issues that we really focus on do not, segregate by race. They're for everybody. We're not talking about tax relief just for white people or black people. We're talking about tax relief for the entire state of Wisconsin here. That kind of thing. That's what I really wanted to talk about.
And we'll be talking to Democratic Secretary of State Doug LaFollette next month on Upfront. Coming up next, are we spending too much on new and expanded highways? The group that says our transportation priorities are backwards. But first, here's the Wiz Politics Week Ahead.
The Marquette University Law School will release its 7th poll of 2014 on Wednesday over the noon hour. It will include new numbers on the races for governor and attorney general.